Welcome to Trial Costa Rica. I'm your host, Adam Baker. This is your weekly video series that discusses everything travel, relocation, inspiration, and living in Costa Rica, so know before you go. Please don't forget to hit subscribe to never miss out on a weekly episode. My guest this week is Rachel Peck. Rachel is originally from Texas. She came over originally with her now husband Adam in 2012. That was meant to be a 6-month trip. Those 6 months turned into 8 years, and they have since raised their family down in the beautiful beach town of Uvita in southern Costa Rica. So who better to chat to about living in Costa Rica and family life by the beach than our very own Texan, Rachel. Rachel Peck, good morning. How are you?
Good, Adam. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us on Trial Costa Rica today.
Of course, I'm excited to be here.
Fantastic.
With you about Costa Rica.
Indeed. So for the big question first is, where do we find you? Whereabouts are you located?
I'm located down in Uvita, which is about an hour south of Manuel Antonio, so in the central or the southern Pacific region of Costa Rica.
Nice. So Uvita, are you quite close to the beach?
Yeah, I live on the flatlands, but it's like a 5-minute drive to multiple different beaches. And I live right next to a river, so I have many areas of water that I can go and explore if I want to.
Awesome. Yeah, that's one of the things that kind of sucks about the Central Valley. When you're in the city area, you do have to drive a little bit just to get to mountains, and you're always quite far away from nice rivers and of course the sea.
Yeah, Uvita has it all. It has the beautiful mountains, the beaches, rivers, everything. That's why I love living down here.
Fantastic. Well, as I mentioned in my introduction, I know you've been here for over 8 years now, since you first came in 2012. To get us started, can you give me a little bit of backstory about what brought you down to Costa Rica and what was the original plan?
Sure. So at the time, he's my husband now, my boyfriend and my mom was living here off and on. And so we came to visit in 2012. And so we kind of just fell in love with the area. And both of us had great careers in the U.S. You know, we had graduated college, had what we thought was our career path. We came to visit and we met a bunch of younger people that down at the beach in Dominical, you know, having beers with them and that sort of thing. And then we started realizing, asking questions, and they were expats. So we were coming from Texas, it's not very common for people to leave Texas. And so we were kind of like, whoa, you guys are our age, you're not retired. You're here, living here. So they kind of told us, we heard multiple stories. And throughout the week, we went back and met up with them to hear more. You know, we were kind of addicted. What do you mean? You moved here? And so then it took us a year and we got back to Texas. And for sure, my husband always felt like he was supposed to be near the beach. In Texas, we live kind of, inland. So it was maybe a 4-hour drive to the beach. And plus those are different kind of beaches than, surfing and waves here in Costa Rica. So it took us a year, and it was true depression for my husband, Adam. He was like, "Okay, Rachel, let's get back there." And so with the help of my mom, she helped us kind of make different connections down here to come and run a very rustic beachfront beach house. But it was rustic to the point where she thought we were going to get here and turn around real quick, because it was pretty rough compared to what, of course, we left in Texas. And we sold everything to have a 6-month adventure, live on the beach, really have that sort of cool 6 months, not have a lot of money sort of, experience. And then now 8 years later, we've had both of our kids here. We go back to Texas to visit, of course, but we're permanent residents. And this is 100% where we call home.
Fantastic. Well, that's quite a different story to a lot of people. You guys were a young couple, and your mum, as you said, who I also know, your mum has been here. She was traveling on and off, or she was living here before?
Yeah, she was, when we first came to visit, she was traveling here on and off. And then slowly she eventually wanted to come down longer as well. So over the few years, even I think when we moved here, she was here half and half, 6 months out of 6 months. And then she did end up moving here full time as well. She's back in Texas now, so she's back and forth. But yeah, so it was, a lot of people joke oh, you moved here to be close to your mom. We're like, no, we moved here to be close to the beaches, and we met a lot of really young people. And so, yeah, so it's kind of a different sort of story than a lot of people, because it ended up that we had just come to where she was staying and traveling, and that's where we kind of just fell in love and met younger people. So that's where we wanted to come back. And like I said, just for 6 months, it was kind of hey, let's sell our cars, live on that money for a bit. and then we'll go back to our careers, in Texas. And then she ended up actually moving to Panama, and kind of left. And so we were like, okay, this is good. This makes us feel independent. Like, and we didn't live with her or anything like that. We lived 30 minutes away, but it still was like, okay, this is the true test if we want to be here without family. And sure enough, for us, 100%, like, this is separate of anything. This is where we're so thankful to have ended up. But yeah, we kind of had an in because Cindy was down here traveling quite a bit. And so she helped us find the little rustic bed and breakfast before we even came down here, because we obviously had to have something, because we're not retired. So it was a really great way into Costa Rica and to this area down here in Uvita.
How many trips did you take prior to making that decision, moving permanently in 2013? And did you travel around Costa Rica in different areas before settling on that southern region?
So that's a great question. So actually, no, we didn't. So I had been to Costa Rica quite a few times before growing up, because my mom's always loved Costa Rica. But we had only done the trip one time when my husband, Adam, my boyfriend at the time, was like, hey, like, let's do it. It took us a full year to get all of our stuff in order. So we didn't make a trip before then. We had just trusted my mom had found a place for us to land short term. And so then we came here and did not, but at the time we were only going to do 6 months. So we weren't going to really travel around. We honestly didn't have very much money. And then when we ended up staying, after getting this job, we were able to travel. So now we've traveled around the whole country multiple times a year. So I'd say we've been to almost every main area. And we still come back to Uvita and say, darn, like, this is where we belong. Like, all the other areas, of course, are amazing and beautiful, but for us, like, this is truly our home. Uvita is, just because of when you drive through, I know you've done it, like driving through Dominical, and you see all those beautiful trees and everything, and then see the ocean to the right. Like, it's totally home for us. So although now we've traveled Costa Rica extensively, we love different areas, but Uvita will always be our home for sure.
That's nice to have that connection, knowing that that was where your mum was originally. You moved down there, you hadn't traveled, but since then, working in travel, you have, and you still find that that's the nicest place in the country to live.
For sure. I mean, Santa Teresa, we joke, like, maybe if we would have found that before Dominical Uvita area. But no, we still, like, when we go visit Santa Teresa and then come back here, you just feel a piece of us is here. It's, and now of course we're settled with my daughter's school and that sort of thing. But even traveling the different areas, I think Uvita still would have been what we ended up in if we would have chosen to travel around first and then, anchor down somewhere.
For sure. Yeah. Whilst both areas, Santa Teresa and Uvita, have very relaxed vibes, you do get a little bit more nature, a bit more tropical, close to the primary rainforest. So you get that green element, whereas Santa Teresa can be nearly Guanacaste, slightly drier.
And that's why we love it, because when we make that drive, you just see the lush green everywhere. And that is like, there are some months that does get a little bit dusty down here on the mountain, but it's nowhere. Just driving down the road, there's this whole stretch between Dominical and Uvita that you just like have these wow moments. You're like, this is like, to the left is the beautiful mountains with the monkeys. And then to the right is like beach right there. So to us, it's like a very, very special, beautiful place. And it has a lot of conveniences. We have a family now, so we need the banks very close. We need grocery stores, that sort of thing. So we do like that it's easy, and it's easier to get to San Jose. It's 3 hours. So it definitely has the convenience now that we are in a different stage of life, not being beach bums. We have more of our kids and that sort of thing to think about. So we're still super thankful to be here in Uvita.
Yeah, that highway connecting over the mountains down the back makes it quite nice. What were some of the biggest headaches you guys faced when you were making that year's transition, when you said, okay, we're going to pack everything up? What were the things that you found were the biggest challenges before coming down?
Definitely, being broke. We did sell our car. We kept one car there just to have something to go back to, and then we did sell one car, and so we had a little bit of money to live on. But I think we were, people always think Costa Rica is super cheap to live at, and it's not. If you recreate the same lifestyle that we were used to in Texas, it's not, going out to eat, drinking beers, drinking mixed drinks, that sort of thing. Like, we went broke super fast. And so I think that was the hardest thing, because we were very used to having our own money, our own careers. And then we came to share one car, and being, we'd only been together for maybe a year and a half when we moved here. So it was a very, very quick altogether. And I also think the biggest thing was just different expenses that we didn't realize were so much more expensive here, which was like good food, eating out, and then cars. I think that was probably the hardest. And then also, going from business careers to then the super laid back lifestyle here was a hard transition. And now we're thankful. That's the whole reason why we chose to raise our kids here, is definitely that simple laid back. But it was hard to get out of the rat race in our mind.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, that was definitely the hardest. It's kind of like transitioning from having money to being broke, and then also from just the more laid back lifestyle compared to what we had in Texas.
For sure. And that's a really interesting point. We have, obviously, as you work in travel as well, we have a lot of travelers and guests coming from Texas. And you mentioned the rat race there, getting used to living in Costa Rica for that first year or that second year. If you're not used to it, the Pura Vida lifestyle, the amount of patience you need on top of coming out of that usual 9 to 5 endless competition.
Yeah.
Was there ever a point when you guys thought, no, well, let's go back to Texas?
Many points, Adam. There was like, our daughter was a big surprise. And so we had been living here 2.5 years, and we still lived in the same beachfront place, which it was literally a rock throw away from our porch to the beach. It was amazing. But yeah, I remember at that point, doing many walks on the beach and just saying, okay, yes, we've made our decision. We're going to go back. And then the next day, no, let's stay here. Let's raise our kid here. So yeah, I think that there was probably more times of us thinking maybe we should pack up and go back home than of choosing to stay here. But we're so glad that we were able to kind of get through all of that. But yeah, there was many times where we were like, what are we doing? Like, we have very little money, but then we think about the opposite of how, like, hey, like, we go to the beach every day. Like, we get to see a sunset every day. Like, we're not in the rat race. And so our quality of life was definitely much higher. So that in the end is what kept us here. And still to this day, we're thankful that that's what we try to find, is the balance, because obviously travel is blowing up right now, which is amazing. And so it's, kind of funny because I find myself working so much, which is wonderful. But then my husband's like, Rachel, remember why I moved here? Remember, you have 2 kids, you want to go to the so it takes us it's still hard to get out of that mindset, but it's constantly finding that balance of going and enjoying the national park, the beaches, the waterfalls, and then still, wanting to provide for our family. So
no, I mean, you've indirectly answered my second question, which was, what's it like living in Costa Rica and why stay? I mean, everything you've just listed: waterfalls, lifestyle, access to the beach, that perfect work-life balance. Even if you're working, 10, 12-hour days, and you can then go for a stroll by the sea, that probably resets you and gets you to go again. What advice would you give someone looking to relocate, especially after the experience that you've had?
Yeah, I would say, I still get this question with clients even now. I think that the biggest thing you can do is like rent first instead of, come and spend an extended period of time, because there's a difference than like coming on vacation, and it's amazing. You're on vacation, you can, it's a totally different lifestyle whenever you transition into living here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to go to do a tour. You're not going to go zip line every day and that sort of thing. So I definitely think staying an extended period of time, and even in different areas, but that's not even that important to me, because if you find a place that you feel connected to, like, explore there more. But I would definitely say come for a longer period of time and try to do it in a way that's not a tourist style, where you're not going to go zip line, like go walk the beach, go to the local sodas, really immerse yourself in what the community is, because that's who in return is going to turn into your family. Like, my mom doesn't live here anymore. We have 2 kids, and both of our families live in Texas. So the people that you immerse yourself with are going to be what helps make you or break you, your experience here, because you need people around you. So I definitely would say, like, immerse yourself, get to know the community, and then stay for an extended period of time and really try to do your normal sort of lifestyle and where you're coming from, to have it here, to see if this is something you can do. Because there are some people that find that it's not all, butterflies and rainbows moving here. And so you have to kind of have like an extended period of time to really see and feel like, hey, I could do this, or I couldn't do this.
No, that's a great piece of advice. We've been hearing that a lot, and we definitely recommend, like you say, staying 3 to 6 months, travel around a bit. But as you do that, make sure you immerse yourself in the culture, and you're not doing the zip lines and eating out lunch and dinner in a fancy restaurant every day, because that's a very valid point. You can get stuck in that vacation feel when you're out and about and you're traveling around or you're renting a place. The soda's a great one. Meet the people, going to the supermarkets. I think with the digital nomad visa coming out pretty soon, if you can rent for 6 months or a year, you get that advantage of not having to literally relocate. You can really feel what it's like to deal with the bills, the cost of living. Would
Yeah.
you say those tips vary depending if you were looking to relocate now with a family? Say you were your age now and you have a couple of kids coming down. How would that change perhaps?
Yeah, it's hard because a lot of times when people ask me those questions, I did this 8 years ago
Yeah.
as a couple together where we didn't have anything tied to us. So yeah, I think it definitely changes, because once you have kids, you want to take into consideration schools and what sort of, help you want around the house and that sort of thing. So yeah, I definitely think, seeing what sort of school opportunities and maybe you want to homeschool and that sort of thing, but you still want to see what sort of community is around for your kids, because that's a huge part of,
Yeah.
when you have kids, like you do everything to make sure that they're living the best. And that's why we chose to stay here even longer, is because we want our kids raised here. We want them immersed in the culture. We want them, being able to go to the beach all the time. So I definitely think, when you have kids, you have to take into consideration those things. So I think maybe checking out the community to see if there's other kids around your kids' ages, and then the schools, I think would be a big deal, because, down here, there's more options for alternative schooling, which is amazing. So I think, and there's also like in Uvita alone, we have a lot of families moving here, and they all want different things for their, children. So there's a Christian school that's here. There's a private school that's more on par with the public school system here, but it is private, so it offers dual languages. And
Yeah.
then there's the more alternative school, which my daughter goes to, which, we could say it's definitely more holistic approach. So there's all sorts of different types. So I think when you determine coming here, making sure your kids are going to feel comfortable. And I think also immersing them in Spanish really quickly is super important, because,
Yeah.
of course, I'm lucky where we've had a wonderful nanny for 6 years who's been with both of our children, and she's taught them Spanish. And so I think that's a very easy and quick way to make them not feel as isolated, is if you can get them in learning Spanish lessons and that sort of thing very quickly, instead of having them be, separated by not having the language barrier.
For sure, and you could, I would imagine, as a parent, even if they were younger kids, the sooner they get practice speaking Spanish and grow up with that, the quicker they will become bilingual naturally. And what a
For sure.
wonderful thing to have throughout your life.
Exactly. Yeah. Whether you stay here in Costa Rica or go anywhere, to have
Yeah.
like a second and third language and everything. So, and that's something I think the U.S. kind of lacked on for my growing up, is, English, 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 and that's it. And I even live
Yeah.
in Texas. I'm from Texas, where Mexico's right there. And so I wish that I would have had that more surrounded by me, then so that way learning a second language wouldn't be so difficult.
Yeah. The UK is exactly the same. They encourage French, German, Spanish, but it's just English, 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 unless you really want to be proactive and going out there. Can you give me an idea for people who might be interested in looking to Oviedo or Dominical? So what are some of the top end costs of living, rent, electricity, and so on? And what are some of the cheapest? And how would they vary, those two options?
Yeah, so I mean, right now this area is super hot for expats because of all the, supermarkets and stuff that are close, and also with beaches, and it's pretty easy to get to with the highway. So there's not a lot of like cheaper options anymore, but I think you can still get a reasonable, very simple house, where you still, you have electricity, obviously, but you're not going to have the AC, you're not going to have the dishwasher, you're not going to have, those extra perks of pool. And I think, maybe for a family, you could, even for a non-family, I think, more of those basic houses anywhere from 400 to 600 per month.
Uh-huh.
And then if you want, of course, the luxuries of the AC, the pool, a lot of times families move down here looking for kind of a similar house from what they come from in the US or wherever they're coming from.
Yeah.
And so I think that ranges around 2,500 a month on the high end for the 2 to 3 bedroom pool,
Yeah.
AC in every bedroom. And then electricity, I think, again, if you have the higher end house, larger house with pool, AC, that kind of thing, like $300 to $500 a month. So it's pretty pricey. And then you can also do it super basic. So if you don't need all those extras, when we first moved here, like I said, actually the first 2 houses we lived in were basic, so basic, like no AC, anything like that. Like, and we wanted that, we wanted that to fill that. And so it was something that was really special. We both look back on it and say, like, that was the most less stressful time of our lives, to have that. And so you can do it and have a bill of $150 a month for your electricity, maybe even less, because water is fairly inexpensive here. So, but unfortunately, it is fairly expensive because you're close to the beach. It's a coastal town. So yeah, I would say on average, the high end is probably going to be 2,500, 3,000 with bills included.
Great. I mean, that's a big difference, and people need to be well aware of that. Hence the importance in coming down and testing those two different types and seeing what works for them. I'm guessing that Uvita's grown a lot in terms of the expat community, especially in the last 8 years that you've been living here. what's it like living as an American family, as an expat family from Texas in Uvita? Is there a big group? Is your social circle locals? Is it mixed? Do you spend a lot of time with expat friends? How does that work and feel?
Yeah, I mean, now that we have kids, it's a little bit different because we
Yeah,
kind of start to mingle with those who have kids.
sure.
Our best friends here, my best friend here is Tika. She doesn't help me speak Spanish. We speak English together, but
Yeah,
my best friend here, actually, two of my best friends here are Tika. But in general, the majority of the people, and there's a lot of Ticos that intermingle with gringos as well. But depending on where you go for school, I live right next to one of the schools, and there is a big mix of who goes there. And then, the more expensive school, unfortunately, there's not as much, locals that go there, which they're hoping to introduce different scholarships and that sort of thing.
yeah,
Yeah, I would say there's a big mix of it, and it's great. There's a lot of ticas that marry gringos and vice versa. So that's always cool because then the kid is both, they get both sort of culture. And my best friend Liz and I talk about this all the time, just the difference of, because her husband is gringo, she's raised here. And then we have their kids who are, getting the best and going to the US and also
yeah,
being here. So
yeah,
real interesting. And there's a big intermingling with, different types of families. And we're now meeting families from Sweden and different countries that is really
yeah.
amazing. Estonia. My daughter has a little girl in her class that is from Estonia. So you meet all sorts of people, and it's amazing to get that different mix of culture while still being surrounded by the locals here, because they're part of the reason why we moved here. Just their kindness and willingness to open their doors and be so accepting to everybody. And even if you don't speak Spanish, they're still going to try and that sort of
Yeah.
thing. So, yeah, I definitely think Uvita, but there are a lot more expats moving down to this area than I remember 8 years ago, and a lot of families, so there's a lot of people that are bringing their kids, to have this different sort of lifestyle, which is always interesting.
Yeah, I imagine it's only going to keep growing. I didn't realize Uvita myself. I was there a couple of months ago, but was growing that much because it's quite a long stretch of area. It's not very, consolidated in one place. What would you say if you asked your kids? What would you say they love most about? I mean, I guess they've grown up here, but they've
Yeah.
been back to Texas with you.
They
So,
have, yeah. They say all the time, like when they talk about Texas, it's just because of the cousins in our family.
right.
So my daughter Brixton, who's almost 6, she'll say, I want to go to Texas. And I'm like, well, why do you want to go there? And she's like, oh, well, to be with Pap and the cousins. And I'm like, okay. But they love living here just because going to the beach every day. And also, my daughter is not one that likes to wear shoes. And we don't have to limit her on those kind of things. So when we go to Texas, it's always like, put your shoes on. I got to make sure you're here. Here it's
Yeah.
so laid back that it's very funny because, she starts to roll her eyes in Texas. She's like, I don't want to have to wear shoes everywhere, So I definitely think that they are total enjoying this simplicity of doing things that just make them comfortable versus having to do things what is acceptable in society, which is more for the States, and
Yeah.
so yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely think that them being able to have more, and her school is amazing. I know there's schools like that in the US, but they're harder to find. They have chickens on site, and they're getting piglets this week to kind of help the kids learn all these different things. So yeah, I definitely think she loves this sort of laid back atmosphere that we have here versus Texas.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, yeah, it's wonderful to hear. I grew up in the southwest of England. There was a few farms, but you had a degree of access to that.
Yeah.
And I can imagine, such a state like Texas, it's a little bit harder. And that relaxed vibe, they must feel pretty chilled out.
Yeah, very comfortable. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. No, this is a difficult question I wanted to ask you because it sounds like you guys are very set now, living down here. You've been here for 8, nearly 9 years. More or less, at what point did you think, okay, Costa Rica is home for the long run?
That's a great question. When we got pregnant with our second child, because we were able to obtain residency and we had our first child here because she was born in San Jose. And we had always kind of debated, should we go through the residency process? This is we're going to be for 5 years down the road. And then when we got pregnant with our second, we both were like, okay, why are we waffling?
Yeah.
We know we're going to be here. We want to raise him here. This is, so it was when we had him, and before we even had him, we were pregnant with him. We said we're now establishing ourselves as a family. We didn't necessarily want to move around to a bunch of different places after having the kids. So we decided and this is also where we knew, just based on being able to go to the beach and lack of tons of technology right in your face. We really wanted our kids to kind of be separated from that.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that it was when we got pregnant with him, we decided like, this is it. Like we've known, but it was still kind of like, that's really, before having kids, we were very much like wanting to travel, kind of figuring out where could we go check out Belize, Nicaragua. And then once you have kids, you're kind of like, okay, like we need to settle down, and you don't necessarily have to, but like we wanted to, we wanted to
Yeah.
give them a sort of place where we're not moving around a whole bunch. And we found, good friends and stuff like that have kids their same age. So we now have a good family here over the past 4 years. So I definitely think that is when we decided like, this is it. We finished our residency and we bought our house and everything. So we are planted here for sure.
Nice. That sounds like a very nice, smooth process when you made that decision. How easy was it for you to get residency? And did you do that through your first child?
I did. Yeah, we did. So, and I know things have changed now. As when people ask me questions, I'm like, I don't know. I moved here a long time ago, and so we did. It was we were able to get residency when Brixton was born, but then we ended up waiting, and then we used Outlier, who was amazing. They were so easy to do everything, and it was fairly easy. It was before COVID, so we were able to get all of our stuff taken care of. It was a very easy process, and now we're so thankful. Like just to have the cedula, we're here. It's like
makes a massive difference.
And like we're like, we've accepted, we love Costa Rica, and now we feel like they've accepted us as like being like, residents here. So it was a really cool feeling, and almost kind of helped us be like, hey, this is home. Like this is where we want to be. So it was a great feeling.
Nice. Well, last couple of questions. First of all, I wanted to ask you, what are your top 3 reasons for living in Costa Rica, and where are your top 3 places to visit for travel? So kind of 2 in 1 there.
Yeah. So my top 3 reasons is definitely my kids. Like I really want to raise my kids in a place that, and I had a great upbringing in Texas, but I want to raise them where the norm is to go out to the beach, go to waterfalls on the weekends instead of being so immersed in technology. It drives me crazy when I see kids, at a restaurant on an iPad or anything like that. I'm like, no, but that's just my personal thing. And so that's not as accessible here. It's not more the norm. The kids, when we go to a restaurant, the kids will all go play with all the other kids that are at the restaurant. So it's more of like that was a huge thing for us. We really wanted to raise them, with more of a simple childhood, where we don't have a ton of toys. We don't have, all the stuff, that's so easy. When we go out to Texas, of course, we love buying stuff, but we really wanted more of the simplicity. The second thing would be the type of school that my daughter's in. I know in the States it would be probably triple or quadruple the price. So that is, just being transparent. That's a huge factor because, having a nanny that comes every single day, and when you compare the cost to the U.S., it's like much greater. Like, I mean, it's probably triple the cost of what it is here. It's a lot less expensive. So we have an amazing school, an amazing lady that comes 4 days a week, and what we pay for those 2 combined is like not even half of what one of them would be in the States. So just being honest with you, that's a huge I'm just thankful that that's a bonus for it. And then the third would definitely be just to, like, on the weekends, to go to the beach and like that be our norm versus, of course we love going out to eat and stuff, but like meeting people at the beach and just setting up shop for the day and just chilling is like the best thing ever. And letting the kids go and like be creative and like not have to like, give them a ton of toys to play with. Like the beach is the biggest playground they can have. So I don't know if that was 3, but that was kind of like the main.
No, they're wonderful. It's really nice, and the importance of the kids and growing up and what Costa Rica enables you to do, as opposed to the old keeping up with the Joneses, the technology,
100%.
the toys. I know what you mean about the tablets. You have such better social skills, even as a kid, as you're engaging, as well as nature and the connection to everything else. And what about your top 3 places? Where do you love to travel with your family when you're on vacation?
So of course, we're beach people. We live at the beach, but we still do love going up to Playa Conchal. For me, that is like the best beach, hands down. Just looking back and seeing the beautiful green and the white, sand and the turquoise water and stuff is definitely my favorite beach. Arenal La Fortuna area has definitely, 2 years ago, we went and spent 9 nights there to like really explore.
Oh, wow,
and, my God, we fell in love there. Like we just, of course, just everything about it just has a different feel than the beach area. And then the third area, I recently fell in love with Monteverde. I went up to Cinda, and at first I was kind of like, oh no, it's just a cloud forest, and I went, and Hans was like, you got to go and just take the kids and see it. And so we only spent 2 nights there, but I was like, this might be like my new favorite place, just because walking around the town just has such a cute and quaint feeling to it, and the restaurants. And I don't know, I was really surprised because beforehand I very rarely recommended it to clients, and now I kind of fell in love with it. So it's a very, very special place. So I think those are three great places. But man, everywhere in Costa Rica, like is like my. Every time I talk about different areas, I start to get chills. Even Drake Bay is like one of my favorites. So it's hard to narrow it down, but I say those are the three that I think are pretty amazing.
And they make for a great vacation as well. Arenal Volcano, Monteverde, Conchal Beach.
Yeah, I didn't realize it's three top places to check out. So no, it's definitely everywhere here in Costa Rica is amazing, though. You can't really get a bad place. So
Monteverde also has some very interesting vibes with those US expats coming over, a lot of green friendly places, a lot of ecological centers. That I used to sell that an awful lot, as that's how I started my trip.
Oh, that's right. You lived there or something.
That's right. Yeah, for a year. It's very small community, so sometimes living there for an extended period can be isolated, but traveling is quite amazing.
Yeah. No, and now the drive is a lot quicker. It used to be, I think, like 5 or 6 hours.
Now
it's 3.5. It's much easier. So we love Manuel Antonio. I mean, I love them all, so it's hard to say.
You're in the right country.
Exactly. Right. Exactly.
Before I leave you, I like to ask everybody this question. What do you wish you could have told yourself now, 9 years ago, before you decided to make that permanent move to Costa Rica to prepare you?
I think maybe let go of the expectations. I can't even remember now what my expectations were, but I just remember if I went into it with a totally different mindset of hey, it's okay to be uncomfortable not having a ton of money. There's a lot of things that when I was uncomfortable, it's okay if the car breaks down to not feel like you can get it fixed. There's a lot of things that you have to let go of the control, that the conveniences in the US, and I'm sure everywhere else, it's things to get fixed just like that. There's no Home Depot here. There's no Target. Being okay with the uncomfortable feeling of, hey, Pura Vida, it might take 5 days to get your toilet fixed, so go pee out on the beach. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Just that uncomfortable feeling, of needing everything to be fixed exactly when I think for both my husband and I both, that would have been the best piece of advice, is just really jump into the Pura Vida instead of coming with the same expectations we had back in Texas. And that my dad comes to visit a few times a year, and that's what he said. He's every time I come here, he said it took 1 or 2 visits, but now when I come, I get into that Pura Vida, and he said, the bank has a long line, Pura Vida. He really gets into it. And even me, sometimes I need to snap back into that. So I think that's the best piece of advice, is just let go of the expectations and learn to be okay with being uncomfortable, because you will be uncomfortable quite a bit on just different scenarios that we're not used to, growing up in Dallas, Texas. So I think that's probably the best one.
Wonderful answer. It's so refreshing to hear you talk about Pura Vida and that those things that you've learned over nearly a decade of learning about that process and learning what Pura Vida is, and that kind of just way of being. And it is okay. It won't happen immediately.
It's still a work in progress, though.
It is. Yeah, believe me. As I say, for 15, 16 years, I feel like I'm still working on it. It took me a long time.
That's what Costa Rica does for us. I think that's why we love it. It's because it's a constant challenge.
So. Wonderful conversation. I really enjoyed it. It's super refreshing. It's lovely to know that you're staying here permanently. What an amazing story. Thank you so much for joining us, Rachel.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to go ahead and put your description below, and your contact information as well. So if people want to reach out to you directly about planning a vacation or possibly relocating or moving with their family, they can reach out to you.
Awesome. I'd be happy to help.
Fantastic. Well, I hope to get you back on in the near future. Thanks so much, and hopefully chat with you soon.
Okay, bye.
Ciao for now. What a wonderful conversation with Rachel. She really has an abundance of information and is truly set on living down here in Costa Rica for the foreseeable future as she raises her kids in the beautiful region of Uvita. If you have any questions for Rachel, you can find her contact info in the description box below. So get in touch. If you have any questions for me, you can get in touch with us as well. And as always, please don't forget to subscribe to never miss an episode of Trial Costa Rica. I'm your host, Adam Baker, and I'll see you guys next week. Ciao for now.